This is America on the Road, named Best Radio Show by the International Automotive Media Conference, and now in its 28th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. And we're going overseas to talk about the European Union. The European Union has just announced a plan that would allow the use of so-called e-fuels in combustion engines after 2035. That's a previous deadline to go all electric. And I think this could be a giant game changer in the auto industry. We'll have details and our thoughts on that coming up. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and DrivingToday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury. So imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at drivingtoday.com/auto insurance. That's drivingtoday.com/auto-insurance. Also in the news this week, a just published article by Reuters says that many electric vehicles, there's no way to repair or assess even a slightly damaged battery pack after accidents, and this is a big problem. It forces insurance companies to write off cars with just a few miles on them, so we'll let you know which automaker is most responsible for this problem coming up. Inquiring minds want to know that. And Tesla is going to make significant makeovers of its Model Y and Model 3. We'll have more details on that. They don't do that very often, so we'll talk about that. I'm Jack Nerad. With me is guest host Matt DiLorenzo. He's right there smiling if you're watching this on YouTube. He's substituting for co-host Chris Teague, who is a little under the weather this week. I expect he'll be back with us next week. Matt has been with us before. He's a great guy, auto expert, former Road and Track editor, among other things. He's the author of the new book, How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, a tightwad's guide to EV ownership. Matt, thanks for being with us.
It's great to be here, Jack.
I'm glad you're with us, Matt, and you're going to be talking about an interesting vehicle. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, I had a chance to drive the ToyotaCrown for a couple of days, and it replaced the Avalon at the top of the Toyota's passenger car line. And it's an interesting vehicle in a number of ways we'll get into later.
Yeah. We will get into that later, probably in some depth because you had a good chance to drive that. I'll be road testing the 2023 Dodge Hornet GT. The Hornet is not just all new, it's the first all new Dodge in 10 years. And I drove it just a few days ago at a driving event in Asheville, North Carolina, where it was hideously cold, actually. It was kind of funny. I wasn't expecting that. But I'll tell you what I discovered later in the show. Terrific guest for you this week, Greg Kitzens is General Manager of Product and Consumer Marketing for Lexus. He and I will discuss the all-new 2023 Lexus RZ, the brand's first battery electric vehicle. I sat down with him for a detailed interview about the luxury SUV and where the brand is headed. And my driving partner on that event was one Matt DiLorenzo, who is with us today, so we can have that in common. I'm sure you'll enjoy the interview, so stick around for that. Before we do anything else, though, let's talk about this auto-related information from around the world that we always tout here on the show. And Matt, this thing about the European Commission drafting a plan to allow sales of new cars that have internal combustion engines after 2035 if they run climate-neutral e-fuels, I think is kind of a big deal, maybe a bigger deal than's been made of it. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a big climb down for them because they were advocating all electric fleet. And Germany actually is, and Italy are behind this latest initiative because they said we're not going to sign on to any vehicle rules that doesn't include internal combustion engines. So Porsche has been developing this e-fuel that uses, it's a synthetic fuel that doesn't use fossil fuels, derived from hydrogen and other things. And I don't know, we'll see. It just further reinforces what we've been saying for a long time is that the death of the internal combustion engine has been greatly exaggerated.
Right. And I think it also points out there are other routes to carbon neutrality, if indeed that is necessary. And let's just assume that it is, okay? There are other ways to get there than just battery electric vehicles. It's not, I think, that we're against battery electric vehicles. In fact, you've just written a book helping people buy them. So we're not necessarily advocates only of internal combustion engines, but I think an all of the above kind of plan where you look at all the things, all the technologies, and then let the technology and the consumer decide. That's kind of my
Yeah,
take on this.
I think there's been too much of a singular focus on battery electric vehicles, and they are part of the solution, but they aren't the solution. And I think a lot of people are beginning to realize that. And as a result, you'll see things like the e-fuels. You're seeing greater interest in hydrogen, internal combustion, and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, especially for heavy duty trucks. So that doesn't mean that the electrification of the automobile or the use of electric motors um, is not, going to continue, because a lot of the vehicles that we'll be seeing in the future will be some sort of hybrid.
Yeah, absolutely true. And you can make the case if many people have hybrids, it's a lot better for the environment than just a few people having electric vehicles. So,
Correct. Yeah.
but a lot of people don't see it that way and don't want any kind of combustion at all. I think cooler heads are prevailing here, and I think Germany's leading the charge here. But as you mentioned, and Germany leading the charge because of the size of their auto industry and the investment that they have in internal combustion engines. And I think they want that to continue.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, let's move on to this next story about EV batteries and what it can do to your insurance, because can be a major problem. This is a story from Reuters, and it points out that there's essentially no way to repair or even assess how badly damaged some battery packs are after an accident. And this is forcing insurance companies who are insuring electric cars to just write off the vehicles, just total those vehicles, put them out of service after maybe just a few miles. And this is because the cost of the battery pack is kind of all out of whack with the cost of the vehicle. Oftentimes the battery pack is at least 50% or close to 50% of the car's total cost. I mean, comment on that. What's your take on that?
Well, it's interesting that the battery pack is the most expensive component there. In doing research for my book, I found out that insurance rates aren't that much different for electric vehicles at this point. They're a little bit more expensive, but not wildly out of whack expensive. I think I looked at a Kona, and they have both a gas and electric version, and it's less than $100 difference in insurance costs for those two vehicles. The problem is that insurance rates are based on loss experience by insurance companies. So, to date, they haven't had that experience of having to replace battery packs, so they don't know what to charge. So they've been basing pretty much the insurance rates on what they've traditionally experienced for regular cars. So the question is how much they begin to lose as a result of this trend. If this becomes a big deal, then you'll see a significant impact in insurance rates. So if you're buying an electric car, that's something to keep in the back of your mind, is that, yeah, my insurance may not be that much more, but it may not, stay that way 3-4 years from now if your insurer has insured, say, a lot of Teslas or a lot of vehicles with very expensive battery packs, and then it begins to affect the loss rates for your car.
Yeah, and we kind of asked the question, what is that brand that makes it maybe hardest to replace the battery pack? And it's Tesla, actually. Yeah. Ford and General Motors at least claim that they have made their battery packs relatively easy to repair. I mean, I don't know how you gauge that, but they can be repaired. With some Tesla models, the battery pack is a structural part, essentially, of the car itself, the body. Mm-hmm. So if that gets damaged, basically you're throwing away that car. I mean, they say, and this is experts quoted in this Reuters story say, in quotes, they have zero repairability. So if you've got this battery pack in your vehicle that's half the price of the car, and you can't repair it, basically you're throwing away a $40,000 car if there's maybe something just damaged in that. I mean, it's pretty amazing that this is happening. And as you say, we haven't seen the total effects on auto insurance yet.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the Tesla is that it's made up of many little thousands of small cells that are slightly larger than a AA battery. Most of the other manufacturers have gone to bigger battery pack units that can be repaired or replaced. But the thing is, they don't have the quick charge capability, the range that Tesla has with its more intricate batteries. But it's a cost question in the end.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see what happens with that. I mean, significant insurance costs can be, a very difficult thing for EV owners coming up. So look for that. On more positive news about Tesla, they are readying the facelifts for two of their most important vehicles, the Model 3 and the Model Y. Probably starting production in 2024 for the Model Y. They have code names for these things. In markets like China and the United States, I mean, there's much more competitive pressure. So, keeping these vehicles in production as long as they have, it's kind of amazing, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, and I'm kind of mixed on it. I think they've done a good job. Tesla is a Tesla. So I don't think styling has been, the reason why you buy one. You buy it because it's an electric vehicle and it looks like a Tesla. So
yeah, that's true.
I expect it'll be a freshening. I don't see a wholesale change, but we'll see what they unveil in 2024.
Yeah, I think it will be more a facelift than a wholesale change, but keeping vehicles in production for it'd probably be 10 years for each of these models pretty soon. That's kind of unheard of in the industry these days. It's a difficult thing to pull off, but they've been able to do it up till now. Well, when we come back, we're going to be road testing some very cool vehicles, including the ToyotaCrown, driven by one Matt DiLorenzo, and I will tell you all about the Dodge Hornet coming up. So stay with us for that. With Matt DiLorenzo, this is Jack Nerad with you right here on America on the Road. Stay with us through the break. Welcome back to America on the Road with Matt DiLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad with us. Chris Teague is not with us this week, and Matt is substituting for him so ably, as he usually does when he can be with us. And you've got an interesting car to talk about, Matt. Tell us about the ToyotaCrown, probably a new name for a lot of people.
It is a new name for a lot of people, but it's an old name for Toyota. Their range topper in Japan has been the Crown, and they actually sold a Crown here briefly in the United States way back in the 1960s. It replaces the Avalon, and it's a full-size sedan, which is kind of a rare bird these days on the road. But it's very comfortable. It's the styling is very contemporary. It's very swoopy. It looks like a fastback, but it isn't. It has a little trunk on the back and a fixed rear glass area. Plenty of room inside, plenty of power. It's an all-wheel drive hybrid. And as such, it really strikes me as being kind of like an SUV wearing a sedan hat, because it sits high. When you think of a big, like a Buick which is very much this thing is in the mode of a big, comfortable American full-size car, you think of them as long and low and wide. This thing is tall. So you come walking up to it, there's some, ground clearance. They have sort of like an SUV inspired cladding on the sides, which I think kind of distracts from the good looks of the car. But it does make it easy to get in and out of. And as you get, people in our demographic who like big sedans like this, that's a plus, is being able to get in and out of the car very easily. It has plenty of power. You can get up to nearly 265 horsepower out of it. It has a hybrid powertrain that gets almost 40 miles per gallon. So it's really a tremendous automobile. And the pricing is between $40,000 and $50,000, which, given that the average car now vehicle costs $45,000, it's in the ballpark of being an affordable family car. It's something that we just haven't seen too many, and I give a lot of credit for Toyota for sticking out in this segment, because there are people who do need or want cars like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they are sticking with sedans when companies like Ford Motor Company, for example, have totally walked away from passenger cars almost. I mean, they're
Right.
selling the Mustang and pretty much nothing else. And that, of course, is a two-door coupe specialty kind of car. There is a market for sedans out there, and it seems like the imports are the only ones willing to exploit it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because this is really a nice, comfortable car, and I referred to Buick earlier as kind of the role model. And Buick doesn't sell a sedan anymore in this country. They sell them in China. They don't sell them here. And its key competitors really are very rare. Nissan has the Maxima, but that's a smaller, it's almost a mid-sized car in comparison to the Crown. And you'd probably have to go to like a Chrysler 300, which its days are numbered. So there really aren't many choices out there if what you want is a 5-passenger, comfortable, full-size car with a decent-sized trunk, and then you get this tremendous fuel economy to boot. It's really I can't speak highly enough of it. The fact that they built this thing and they're still selling them in the U.S. They will find people who will buy that, and the people who want that kind of car, they'll probably pay close to sticker or over sticker for one. They're not, it's funny that the manufacturers who remain in these traditional segments are finding that they're holding their profit margins a lot better, like the people who are still in the minivan market and the people who still build full-size sedans.
Yeah, well, it shows that in areas where there's a huge amount of competition, you see real price pressures, but in areas where there isn't, much less so. And this is certainly an area where there's not that much competition. I mean, from mass market brands, you can count those kind of cars on practically on your thumbs,
Right.
on the fingers of one hand.
Sure. And even the Koreans had them and they got rid of them, like the Cadenza and Hyundai and Kia. But in their luxury, like in the Genesis, you can still get like the G90. But again, you're stepping up. You're looking at paying maybe $20,000 or $30,000 more for a car that essentially delivers all the luxury, has all-wheel drive, decent fuel economy, decent power. So it's really worth a look if you need a traditional four-door sedan. And maybe they're going to make a comeback. Who knows? People's tastes change. They could get tired of being in an SUV and want a traditional four-door car.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe Buick sedans will make a comeback. I'm not holding my breath expecting that to happen, but it could happen.
Right.
Well, speaking of brands that maybe need a little rejuvenation, Dodge is one, and it's getting it with the 2023 Dodge Hornet. This is the brand's first all-new vehicle in more than a decade, and you really have to hand it to Dodge. With not a new portfolio of vehicles at all, they have more than held their own over the last decade. If anything, they've grown through that time because they kind of know what they are and they kind of know what they aren't. And I think they're expressing that in ways that a lot of brands don't. I think a lot of brands want to be everything to everybody, but Dodge doesn't. The new Dodge Hornet is kind of a little bit of a left turn on what Dodge has been before, but not totally though. It points out the way Dodge is going to talk about performance, I think, going forward. As I said, it's the first all-new Dodge in a long, long time. And the top of the line is a performance hybrid. So kind of what you were just talking about with the Toyota Crown. Their top model, the Dodge Hornet RT, which is going to come as a 2024 model later this year, is a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid vehicle. And it has the highest horsepower of the two variants. The other Dodge, the GT, is powered by a turbocharged 2-liter engine, 268 horsepower, plenty of horsepower. It's a really well-regarded engine. I like that engine a lot that's in that vehicle. This is a vehicle that bears the Dodge name, but it's not built in the United States. It's built in Naples, Italy. And so that's good. It's inspired and based on the same platform as an Alfa Romeo vehicle, and pretty cool. What's your overall take, just hearing about this vehicle? I don't think you've driven it yet, Matt, but what's your take on Hornet?
Well, I think it's really an interesting vehicle because it's being pitched as a SUV, compact SUV. But if you look at the vehicle and you take it all in, it comes across as more of a hot hatch. And the fact that it's based on an Alfa Romeo says a lot of good things because the handling will be there, the performance will be there. It's much the same way as when Chrysler was teamed up with Mercedes and Daimler Chrysler days, and they built the Charger and Challenger and the 300 using Mercedes E-Class platform. So there are good bones underneath this vehicle. So I think it's going to be a legit performance vehicle, and it's going to be priced in a way that it may attract new customers to the brand, because the entry level non-hybrid version starts at about $30,000, and you get an all-wheel drive package that has 268 horsepower, as you mentioned.
Yeah, well, I had a chance to drive both variants on this driving event, and I'll push back a little bit on the hot hatch thing, because this is really a true compact SUV. It's got all the size that entails, and it's that tall. But it does have the handling of a hot hatch. It handles very, very well, and it has plenty of horsepower. I think that's the big differentiator here, even in GT form. And maybe I shouldn't say this at the beginning of the review, but I think the GT is probably the better buy than the RT. You only get 20 additional horsepower with the RT, and there's a little bit of, kind of oddness to some of that drivability, at least in the short test I had in that vehicle. I spent much more time in the GT, but I like the GT so much, and with a suggested base price of just $29,995, $29,995 plus $1,500, $1,600 in destination. I mean, it's a heck of a buy. Of course, I was driving a GT Plus version that has a lot nicer stuff on it. It has a power liftgate, sunroof, ventilated front seats, that kind of stuff, but still $35,000. You can look at that a couple different ways. I think that's a lot of money for a compact SUV, but for a vehicle with 268 horsepower, that's a kind of a blast to drive, and you're not going to see one on every block. Pretty cool. So I like that a lot. Good stuff in here. I think really premium kind of stuff. 12.3-inch driver instrumentation screen. The bigger screen is in front of the driver, and then the infotainment screen is a little bit smaller. It's about 10 inches. Has, of course, the Uconnect 5, which is one of the best infotainment systems out there. So I like that a lot. Really fun to drive vehicle with a really well sorted out suspension. Great in terms of comfort and convenience. Just a lot to like about this vehicle. It even has more driver assists than you would expect. I mean, Chrysler's and Dodge has been kind of lagging behind a little bit in that, but in this vehicle, certainly not the case. Has active driving assist, among other things. So this is a vehicle that's chock full of good stuff for something like $40,000, between $35,000 and $40,000. I think a lot of people are going to flock to the new Dodge Hornet. And I guess you don't flock to it. Maybe you swarm to it or something like that, but that's coming up. So a vehicle we like, in fact, two vehicles we like here. Well, when we come back, we'll have a terrific guest for you. Greg Kitzens is General Manager of Product and Consumer Marketing for Lexus. So stay with us for that interview with Matt DiLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad with you, and stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to America on the Road. This is Jack Nerad back with you, and thanks so much for being with us. We are north of San Diego, California, in a town called Encinitas, right on the coast. Beautiful location. With me is a terrific guest. Greg Kitzens is General Manager of Lexus Product and Consumer Marketing.
That's right.
Thanks so much for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Jack.
It's an exciting day because you're showing a really exciting product, and let's dive right into that. Tell us about what we're seeing today and what we're driving.
Well, you're seeing our all-new, all-electric Lexus RZ 450e. It is our first full battery electric vehicle, and it really embodies, kind of four key pillars that we've been focusing on with our new products, and that is, bold design, intuitive technology, the Lexus driving signature, which hopefully you'll get to experience out on the road, and lastly, electrification, which it fully embodies.
It's got to be very exciting for you. I mean, certainly the luxury market is probably turning to electricity quicker than the mainstream market is. Kind of makes sense. Electrification is expensive typically, right? So talk about that. How important do you think this will be to Lexus as a luxury brand?
Well, we think it's very important. One is, we're not new to this electrified space. We've been in this for a long time. We launched our first RX 400H back in 2004. So we've learned a lot from our hybrids and our plug-in hybrids. And this is, really an electrified vehicle that is a Lexus first and maybe electrified second. So we set out to build a Lexus, not just an electrified car. So when you get in it and you feel it, it's got all the quality, the durability, the luxury of a Lexus. And more importantly, I think what differentiates us from maybe some other manufacturers is the dealership experience, in that you have a trusted partner to guide you through your electrified journey if you're just stepping into electrification for the first time.
And that is such a difference, isn't it? I mean, a major competitor obviously is Tesla. Tesla kind of goes the opposite direction. If anything, they certainly don't have franchise dealers, they sell direct. Right. A lot of purchasers just go online and buy one, right? I mean, quite the opposite. So I think you definitely have an advantage there. This is something that Lexus has been doing for, 30, 40 years,
Yes.
since the brand was created. Hand-holding its customers through the experience and through the ownership experience. Expand on that a little bit.
Well, I think, important with this vehicle is the amount of education we've done with the dealership staff. And that's just not only the sales staff or the service staff on the tech side of the business, but the entire staff. So we brought the entire dealership associates in for training. And we actually conducted training, and they got to drive the vehicle before you got to drive the vehicle. So
unfair.
So we gave them, just a full indoctrination into one, electrification, but two, into this product, because we wanted everybody to understand how important this vehicle is, and that they need to be that kind of concierge to our customers to really help them through with their charging needs, getting a charger installed in their house. Our dealers have chargers in stock that they can get installed for the customer. They can add it into your purchase or lease agreement, so it's right in the cost of the vehicle. So we try to make that easy, because that has been kind of a barrier to entry for a lot of electrification intenders.
Right. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. Having driven a lot of electric vehicles now, I know it's a different experience, and the ownership experience is different than
Yes.
having a conventional internal combustion engine vehicle. And that has to be explained, I think. And certainly the Lexus customer probably wants that kind of hand-holding.
Well, they absolutely do, especially if they're a current Lexus customer now and have had a couple Lexus in their past. They're really used to that, high-touch, dealership experience, not only on the sales, but on the service side. And they expect nothing less with their electrified vehicle. And some that might be a little bit hesitant or a little bit concerned about going online and trying to figure all of this out on their own, we really provide that education, the information, the tools that they need to really understand this fully before they dive in.
Yeah. I'm curious about the customer for this vehicle. It's in a segment where we're seeing a lot of entries, right? I mean, it's because there's so much volume there is part of it, and certainly on the luxury side, we're seeing entries in this size range. And who is the customer? Is it a Lexus customer who wants to go electric, or is it a Conquest customer, somebody from another brand who wants an electric and sees this as a terrific vehicle?
I think it's both. I think initially a lot of Lexus customers who have been maybe waiting for the right electric vehicle or the right manufacturer to produce electric vehicle, have a lot of trust in our brand, will be a big group that'll be interested in this vehicle. I also think there'll be some conquest. I think this will be millennials, young families, obviously highly educated, above average household income, that are looking for something that maybe add a little bit more luxury, quality, dependability than maybe what's out in the marketplace today.
Yeah, and screwed together maybe a little better than some of the competitors too. Give our listeners some sense of this vehicle. I mean, we kind of just dove right into experience, but size, what some competitors might be, or those kind of things, or what's a comparable non-electric in the Lexus lineup for that?
Well, relatively speaking, it's about the size of a Lexus RX. It doesn't look that big, right? But it is has the same wheelbase as an RX. It has about the same overall length as an RX. The thing about it is just the way it's configured. It actually adds 2 more inches of headroom than an RX, and that's because of the panoramic dynamic sky roof that really gives you a little bit more headroom as well. I would say the key things are, one, the powertrain. So the Lexus driving signature comes through in the fact that we have really 2 one-motor hybrid powertrains, one front and one rear, that are very independent. Obviously, through the computer, they work very closely together, but it gives you a very smooth ride. There's a 150 kilowatt motor in the front, an 80 kilowatt motor in the rear, and it really allows the vehicle to be all-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, or rear-wheel drive, and produce different characteristics. But
and it chooses, right? I mean, the customer doesn't choose that.
Well, you could choose, for example, if you select the range mode, which gives you the best range, we shift most, in fact, all of it to the rear motor, which is 80 kilowatts, so smaller electric motor, draws less power.
Right.
But that doesn't mean the front engine isn't ready to kick on if there's a condition that warrants it, whether it's traction or whether you need to accelerate very quickly. It's still standing by ready to act.
What do you think, as a marketing guy, what are some of the hot button things that this vehicle presents that others don't, that competitors don't, where you think you have a competitive advantage?
Well, I think one of the things that is both, it helps efficiency, but helps the passenger is the HVAC system. We actually have
heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Yep. Yes. Especially heating. We have really 2 systems. One combines the seat heater and what we call radiant heat, and I'll discuss that in a second, along with the heated steering wheel. And one is the typical kind of forced air, blower motor.
Yeah.
The forced air blower motor is a fairly inefficient way because you have to heat the whole cabin.
Yeah, heating all the air in the cabin.
And you're losing through the glass and through the roof or whatever.
Right.
The seat heater provides heat directly to the body. The radiant heat, we have 2 radiant heat units, one under the steering column, one under the passenger side, that warms the legs and the lap area. That comes on instantly with your seat heater, along with your steering wheel. So you get warm very quickly, and we still have the forced air blower, which is a new turbo configuration, much more efficient. But we'll see that consumers will turn the seat heater and the radiant heater down because they're joined together very quickly because it warms up so fast. So it drops the use of power and helps you extend your range.
Yeah. And that's important. I mean, it's not inconsequential, is it? I mean, it's a significant amount of range you can gain by going to that kind of system, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. And then the other thing is the panoramic roof, what we call dynamic sky, that at a touch of a button will go fully opaque, or, hit the button again, and it's fully transparent. You can let the sunshine in as well.
Yeah.
Great new feature for us.
Talk about infotainment. I mean, certainly giant screen in this vehicle, and
yes,
kind of dominates the dash. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the 14-inch screen incorporates, Lexus interface, which allows you to bring all your infotainment in, navigation as well, traffic jam assist. There's a lot of, infotainment and features that are tied to that 14-inch screen that allows it, but still keeps things like the volume control knob that you can turn physically. You don't have to touch the screen to adjust the volume.
Love that real knob. I absolutely do, and so kudos to that. Give us the nuts and bolts about pricing and availability before we let you go.
So pricing. RZs are on the boats. They're coming over as we speak, and once they get to our port facility and process, they'll begin rolling out to dealers sometime second half of March. Pricing wise, with destination and everything, $59,650 is the premium grade. I think for about another $1,200 you can You can upgrade the 18-inch wheel to a 20-inch wheel. And then our luxury grade is 64,150, I believe.
Okay.
Is the MSRP.
And is that kind of all in, or could you take that up closer to 70K if you added bells and whistles?
The luxury is pretty well equipped. There's not much you would want to add to the luxury edition.
Okay. And those are coming to market as 2023 or 2024 models?
These will be 2023.
Got it. And coming to a Lexus dealer near you soon?
Coming to a Lexus dealer near you soon.
All
Yes.
right. Well, Greg Kitzens, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it. Great information about the new Lexus.
Yeah, well, happy to spend some time with you. Thanks so much.
Nice to talk to you. And stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Matt DiLorenzo. This is Jack Nerad back with you for listener question time. Chris Teague will probably be with us next week. We hope so. He's a little under the weather this week. With Matt, who is the author of a terrific book on buying an electric vehicle. It's over my right shoulder. Is with us. Matt, tell our listeners the name of your book.
It's called How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, a Tightwad's Guide to EV Ownership. And basically, it's a soup to nuts how-to guide on if you want to buy an electric car. There are some affordable alternatives out there. The reason I wrote the book is that owning an electric vehicle is a lot different than a conventional car, and this just kind of takes you through what those differences are so that when you're out shopping, you're not going to be surprised by anything.
Right. And avoiding surprises, particularly with a giant purchase like a car, makes a whole lot of sense. And as you point out, an electric car is not the same as buying a gasoline car. So people who just think they're interchangeable, like buying a new pair of shoes, not the case.
Right.
Not the case. Well, let's take a listener question here. Leon lives in Oak Park, Illinois, which is actually where my parents grew up. And this is what he says. I'm looking for a fun-to-drive vehicle, and I can spend about $35,000. I'm a single guy in my late 20s. Any suggestions for me? Matt, you're a single guy in your late 20s, aren't you? I mean, tell us. Well, not quite, but
I'm two single. I'm married to single guys in their late 20s or 30s. There are a lot of fun cars out there. The question is whether you can get by with two seats or you want kind of a SUV or what is your lifestyle? One of the cars I really like is the Toyota 86. It's kind of a fun, affordable two-seat coupe it's got a little backseat area, but it's for your briefcase or whatever, backpack. Another thing to look at, I like some of the smaller SUVs. They're kind of fun, things like the Kia Sportage and the Hyundai Tucson. Those are the Santa Cruz, if you want a pickup truck. New Maverick is a good one. So there are a lot of affordable vehicles that are coming out in the lower, under $40,000 that you can get into.
Yeah, absolutely true. I think something like the Hyundai Kona N is a really cool choice. Car and probably meets that price point. The vehicles like that, I think, are what you should be looking at, where there's a lot of performance equipment, but it's not a big car. It's not in some ways super impressive in terms of size, but it's really well equipped for fun driving. Yes. I think those are terrific kind of vehicles. So look for things like that. You can find them from Hyundai. I think they're now performance variants of even the Toyota Corolla. And I think that one of the things, one of maybe the best performance values in that kind of price range is the Honda Civic Si. I mean, that's a terrific vehicle, I think, in that price range. And for a guy in his late 20s, maybe that's the way to go.
I drove that GR Corolla, and I was really impressed because it was full-time all-wheel drive. It had a 3-cylinder engine that was making like 300 horsepower. It's amazing. But it's a manual. Leon, you better know how to drive a manual if you want to have fun.
Right. Well, and there's a lot to like about that involvement with the vehicle you get from a manual transmission. And I think the Civic Si, if I'm remembering correctly, is also manual only. Maybe not, but it could be. I know the Type R certainly is from Honda. That's more expensive, but that's another 100 horsepower or something like that. But they're still building performance cars that are affordable. Not too many of those. I think another way to look, I think, are Mustang, kind of lower line Mustang Camaro. Those are fun to drive cars with kind of a lot of horsepower now.
Yeah, even the base models have about 300 horsepower. Whether you get a 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder, you're not going to notice a huge drop off in power from the base V8. So those are fun. And you got to get the Camaro, but while it lasts.
Yeah,
so some of those cars are going to go away soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's a question from Wilma in Julian, California. I think our family needs a 3-row SUV, but I'm amazed by how expensive they are. Do you have any thoughts or advice? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a real problem. You look at the 3 rows, and if you want any kind of space in the back, you're looking at either a full size or the top end of the mid-size range, and they're so popular right now. People are paying sticker. They're and even like in the Toyota line, they have the Highlander, and they're coming out with the Grand Highlander, which is even bigger, and it's kind of slotted between the Sequoia, but they're still way expensive. The thing I think you need to look at is if you have smaller kids and you can get by, I would look at something like the Kia Sorento, and I think the Santa Fe may have a 3-row option. I do know that like in the Tiguan at VW, which is kind of an unexpected play. People don't think SUVs.
And the Tiguan is actually pretty big. It's touted as a compact SUV, but it's larger than most of those with the option of a third row.
A third row, yeah. And I think the Mitsubishi Outlander. So I think that part of the affordability question is zigging where people zag. A lot of people, they see how popular like the Telluride is and the Palisade, and they're all flocking to those brands, and that's the ones that really are in high demand. You can't get much of a discount off sticker, that kind of thing. But these smaller brands like Mitsubishi that nobody is shopping, they offer a 3-row Outlander, and the other one would be a Nissan. I would shop them because they're kind of the quiet giant of the Japanese. They do okay, but they're not at the tip of everybody's tongue. So you can probably find a pretty good deal on a Nissan as opposed to a Toyota or a Honda. So,
well, and let me tell you about that too, because in my driveway right now, and it was kind of shocked me, Matt, is a Honda Pilot Trail Sport. So not the lowest line of the brand new, 100% brand new Honda Pilot with a sticker price of less than $45,000.
Yeah,
I was kind of blown away because a lot of these vehicles now we're seeing are $5,000, $10,000 more than I would expect them to be. This is a vehicle. This is a 3-row vehicle that has a lot of stuff on it, and brand new for that kind of price. So that's one I would point to as kind of a bright light.
I think a lot more people shop trim than the manufacturers realize. Because there was I think it was either the Civic or they dropped their LX version, and like people stopped buying the cars because there wasn't the cheap one around, and they're bringing back the LX trim level because they realize, they can't keep asking for more, especially as production returns to normal after COVID and all this other stuff. You're beginning to see an element of competition creep back into the industry, which I think is a really good thing for consumers.
Yeah, absolutely true. And those lower line vehicles, like as you mentioned, a Honda, pick a model LX, their lowest line, of the LEs from Toyota. I think in a lot of ways those are the highest value vehicles because you get the same platform that then you can add another $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 of options and stuff on. But that basic platform, the powertrain, it's all there.
Yeah. Yeah, they would rather sell the top line with all the stuff on it, but people don't buy or use cars that way, and that's getting back to my book. We are tightwads.
Right. Well, here's a question I think is right up your alley, Matt. This is from Grover in Bend, Oregon. I've been looking at electric cars, but it doesn't seem like there's much variety. There's just a few vehicles that are under $50,000, and they seem to be pretty small. Is this going to change?
Slowly. I think the first EV of any size that'll be in that price market is the Chevy Equinox, and it's still 8 to 10 months away, and it'll be affordable, but it'll be bigger. But he's absolutely right. Under $50,000, everything is either compact or smaller. We don't really have a true mid-size affordable EV yet, and I'm waiting.
Yeah, well, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that's the end of our show for today. So, Matt, thanks so much for being with us. Remind our listeners of the name of your new book, because they should run out and buy it. In fact, they don't even have to run out. They can just click on something and buy it, right?
How to Buy an Affordable Electric Car, a Tightwad's Guide to EV Ownership, and you can find it both on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com.
Very good. I'd like to tout my latest book, Dance in the Dark. It's a crime thriller. It kind of has very little to do with cars, but it talks about crime. There's actually some car chases in it that I think are kind of cool. So look for that. It's available on Amazon as a paperback or a Kindle edition, inspired by true crime. Go to Chris Teague's site, yourtestdriver.com. Does great stuff there. And if you like the show, please pass it on to another listener. And remember, the show is available as a podcast, so look for that. We want to thank our SportsMap Radio Network stations for carrying America on the road, and let people know where you hear it, when you hear it on the radio, and where you hear it. And join us again next time for another edition of America on the Road. This is Jack Nerad and Matt DiLorenzo signing off for now, and looking forward to seeing you later.